Hello everyone, let's talk about retro gaming. We reached a point where retro games are accessible anywhere, from any computer browser to smartphones, current generation consoles, smart TV, smartwatches. You can play those games even on a datasheet device. Imagine going back to the past and telling everyone that you would be able to play the libraries of all portable and home consoles in a single device. People would think you're nuts. But with all that progress, there is something about the real consoles that you never get from modern emulation machines. Recently I got a flash card to the Nintendo 64 since I fixed the controller analog sticks a while ago. And playing all of those games on the real console felt different. Even though you can play a few of these titles on the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, playing the same game on the real console was an entirely different experience. And I stopped to think that this doesn't apply only to the Nintendo 64. Any retro console will feel different, from their different controllers to the graphical quirks, the way that the graphics look on a CRT television, even the nostalgia factor. Just by holding an original cartridge in your hands makes you feel different about that content. Sure, the content is the same of any ROM you could use on an emulator, but holding this cartridge in your hand and seeing the 30 years of history behind it in all its details, all of the tiny scratches and torn pieces of the label, you'll know that you're holding a real piece of gaming history. It's like finding an ancient fossil, a gaming fossil. It boosts the nostalgia factor 10 times more. Suddenly all of the good memories you had with the game comes back. You remember all of the friends you made, all of the hype you got when you saw the first screenshots about it on gaming magazines. It all adds up. Sure, the experience is not always as good as you remember. The original Game Boy screen has serious ghosting issues, not to mention the lack of a backlight on older screens. And even when a console had backlight, it wasn't as sharp and crispy as the screens we have today. The Sega Genesis will have rainbow banding on CRTs, and visible jail bars if you use it on modern LCDs with RGB. The Super Nintendo graphics will look slightly worse depending on the model you have, and some cartridges uses special chips inside, meaning you won't be able to play them on a cheap reproduction cartridges or flash cards, and you'll have to spend a lot of money on the original cartridges. The Nintendo 64 has a much lower resolution than what we get on modern emulators, and saving your games on a Dreamcast is a pain, and the list goes on. On the other side, gameplay on the real console is just as the game was intended to be played. First, the graphics will look amazing on the CRT. Even though you can use filters that will try to mimic that retro look, absolutely nothing gets close to the scanlines, brightness, and refresh rates of a real CRT. Let's take a moment to appreciate this. Look how bright the picture is. The colors are vivid, the blacks are really dark, and the pixels blend in. Also, there is no input lag, and that alone is a night and day difference. Your commands are almost instantaneous. Gameplay feels snappy, precise, and most importantly, fun. Dodging attacks on Mega Man X2, timing your jumps on Super Mario 64, it feels so much better. I tried replaying Zelda A Link to the Past on my Nintendo Switch, but somehow I didn't feel motivated to finish it. But then I got my best friend's Super Nintendo, and when playing on the real console, the sword swings came out at the exact moment that I pressed the button. In a super slow footage, you can see that it takes only 2 scan lines from a CRT to update the image after I push the button. And with the Super Nintendo on a modern display, you already have a bit of lag, but it still feels great to play. On the Switch Online app though, the lag is severe. And it's even worse when playing in handheld mode. You can even see the delay in the sound of the sword after I push the button. And here is all of them together in a slow motion comparison. Playing on the real console is so much better. And on top of that, I couldn't use save states on any of those games. All of the boss battles felt much more challenging and rewarding. Another small point, but surely important, is that with the real consoles you'll have perfectly accurate performance. Emulation sometimes has small audio and graphical differences, and depending on the console, emulation can't even come close to the original hardware. Take a look at the original Xbox for example, we don't have a good emulator to this day. And with that, I'll finish this video inviting you to play a game on a real hardware. You can use a reproduction cartridge, a flash card, or an original game. You have to see the difference with your own eyes. And on the next video, we'll take a look at the Mr. FPGA, which is a cool alternative for playing retro games on modern TVs. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure you won't miss that review when it comes out. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.